The plutocrats have set up an oligarchy in America, but at least I still have free speech sometimes. July 3rd, 2014, on the People's Radio.
The People's Radio is an experimental technocratic media format for the working class. The thoughts and opinions expressed on the People's Radio are not necessarily the thoughts and opinions of Organizing for Humanity, of the People's Radio, or of anyone else. Viewer discretion is advised.
This week there are so many things to discuss, so many things to talk about. But we have to start, of course, with the big news item, the Supreme Court decision on the Hobby Lobby case. Where do we begin on how wrong the Supreme Court got it? As has been pointed out by numerous news outlets, 5 men decided the fate of thousands of women. How about let's just talk about the fact that it is exactly what the First Amendment is against. This is a law, an exception for Christianity, for Christian belief. This is the United States government enacting a law for the benefit of one particular sect of Christian belief, one particular small denomination of Christian belief. One small company has a misconception about certain contraceptives. And here's the thing. Let's just blow this out of the water right now. They aren't against all contraceptives. In fact, there's an entire list of pills that they still pay for and they had no issue with whatsoever. And some of these are strong contraceptives that could possibly be considered, abortion pills, which is what they're supposedly against. No. They specifically targeted specific pills that they disliked because they called them abortion pills. And the medical community has responded and said these are not abortion pills. Period. They just prevent pregnancy from occurring. So Hobby Lobby was wrong on the science. They were wrong about the issue from the get-go. They were hypocritical from the get-go because they just selectively picked out a couple of contraceptives that they didn't like, but they kept all the rest. And then the Supreme Court is hypocritical by saying that, oh yeah, we're going to make this one exception for this one particular version of Christianity that resides at this one particular corporation. Now, how did they get away with this? How did they do it? How did they phrase their argument? They basically said that corporations, because now they're people, Citizens United ruling, everybody. Google Citizens United if you don't understand. Because corporations are now considered people, according to Mitt Romney in the Supreme Court, they can now hold religious beliefs. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that great? Isn't that fantastic for America? Because, corporations already didn't have enough power. We need to also bestow upon them the ability to have religious beliefs. What is the ramifications of this? We have no idea. We have no idea where this is going to go. We have no idea what's going to become of this. But I think I might have a hint. President Obama has already received letters from contractors, government contractors, saying, hey, if Hobby Lobby doesn't have to pay for contraceptives because of their religious belief, then we don't have to hire gays because our religion is against homosexuals. It has begun. The Supreme Court has kicked off an absolute political nightmare. This is going to tie up the courts for the next 10 years. Oh, you think? No. Don't think I'm exaggerating or being hyperbolic. They're going to be arguing this for 10, 12, 14, 16 years. They're going to be all, oh, I'm a company and I need my religious exemption because they got a religious exemption, so we need a religious exemption. And it's all going to come crashing down the day a Muslim company declares Sharia law in the workplace. The day a Muslim company says no lunch hour during Ramadan. The day a Jewish company says no praying to Jesus in the cafeteria area or whatever. It's all going to come crashing down just as soon as a Wiccan organization says seances at work. It's all going to come crashing down as the day that a non-Christian religion decides it wants a religious exception. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, the Christian right, the Republican right wing will suddenly have a problem with it, and corporations will then no longer be trusted with religious belief. We saw this in Louisiana recently. Louisiana state legislature passed a law that enabled state tax funds to go to private school vouchers. They had a voucher program. So basically the way that it works is tax money went to subsidize and to help pay for private schooling, right? And they specifically put into the bill that creationism was okay and it could be taught and all that jazz. But then, out of nowhere, a Republican had a problem with this whole setup. Even though she voted for it, she had a problem with it because she discovered that tax dollars were going to vouchers that were then going to a Muslim school. Oh, can't have that. No siree. She was even interviewed and she said, yeah, but I voted for the program, but I never expected the money to go to that. They truly believe that they have the only religion on planet Earth and that no other religion exists. And as soon as they wake up and realize that when they put into law religious exemptions, other religions also get that exemption, they suddenly have a problem with it. Because they do not want religious exemptions, they want Christian exemptions. They want Christianity to be special. They want Christianity to get all the breaks. They don't want other religions getting breaks. I could read this, but what's the point? We already know this is bad. Do I really need to explain this to you? I believe that the listeners of this program are smart enough to understand why this is a bad idea. Why it's a bad idea to flat out say, these women, because they work for your store and because your store is owned by religious zealots, they don't have all the medical options that other people do. They don't get to have insurance that covers all contraceptives like everybody else. And it's just preposterous. They're supposed to pay for it out of their pocket. Why? Why? When every other female that works full time in the country is covered, how come they, just because they're working for Hobby Lobby, have to pay for it out of their pocket? I don't understand this. I mean, what if Organizing for Humanity just declared that it was religious one day and said, oh, we don't believe in doing this or doing that because of our religion? The world just doesn't work that way. It really doesn't work that way. Either you want to be a for-profit private company or you want to be a church. Pick one. Pick one. Don't be a for-profit private company that demands that your religion be upheld by the courts. Because that's really what this is. They're asking the United States court system to uphold their religious beliefs against their workers. Now, I want to bring up an article from Politico magazine. I think... I don't know how to pronounce this guy's last name. I'm going to try. This is written by Nick Honor? Honauer? Honor? Huh. That's a Hanauer. Now, this guy's claim to fame is that he's a billionaire. He's really rich. And one of the major reasons why he's really rich is because he was the first round investor, one of the first round investors in Amazon.com. I'm sure you know what Amazon.com is. No need to explain that one, thank God. So he pens this, they say it's a memo, but to me it looks like an op-ed, just looks like an opinion piece that he penned. Specifically, it is written to his fellow billionaires, whom he calls his fellow zillionaires. And me and the wife were having a discussion about this a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about inequality in America. And what we're seeing now is the fastest growing levels of inequality than any country throughout recorded history has ever seen. We the many, we the 99%, are losing our butts right now. And every single day, the market zooms to a new high. More money is made in America than has ever been made before. But all of that money is being funneled and channeled up to the tippy top. They call it trickle-down economics. And thanks to our Republican friends, this is the economy that we've had for almost 36 years now, where the top 1% get all the money, and then we get to fight over the crumbs that fall from the table. And yes, your fellow neighbors and fellow voters think that this is a wonderful idea. So me and the wife were talking about inequality, and we were talking about inequality in history. We were talking about whenever countries have had this level of inequality in the past, what has ended up happening to them. And I brought up France. A lot of people alive today don't really know the history of France. They don't really think about it because it's drilled into your head from the time you're born to the time you die. America, 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 America. And it explains the narcissism that we see today from American citizens. They act as though their country is the world and that all other countries are inconsequential. Well, that's just not true. America has the largest economy in the world. And one of the reasons why that is because it was unpillaged, undeveloped land, large amounts of land, full of natural resources. And the people came and they took it away from the natives here, and then they went through the Industrial Revolution and just started pillaging it and raping it and taking the natural resources. And we've been doing that for over 150 years now. But the party is over. We're starting to run out of oil. We are starting to now tap our natural gas reserves, and our natural gas reserves have now less than 100 years left. So the party's coming to a close. We're about 1 to 2 generations away from the party being over here in America. And that's just because our resources are dwindling. Another reason why America is the great economic boom that they are today is because after World War II was over, our factories were untouched. Meanwhile, all the other factories in the developed world were bombed to shit. So we started churning out the refrigerators and the submarines and the guns and the power outlets and the heaters and air conditioners, and we started producing a large portion of the world's goods with our factories that were untouched during the war. So don't think for a second that America's great just because America's great or because God touched it. It just so happens that America came along at the right time and had the right amount of resources and was able to keep out of world wars physically in a way that their factories survive. Now, we're getting back to this memo from a zillionaire. He calls himself a zillionaire, Nick Honor. And after the break, we're going to start to talk about some excerpts from it and what are some of the things that he says and what they have to do with France and the French Revolution. Remember, kids, the French literally walked into the palace, pulled the king and queen out, and chopped their heads off in the town square. We're talking about zillionaire Nick Honor and his memo that he pinned to Politico magazine. He starts off the piece. You probably don't know me, but like you, I am one of those 0.01 percenters, a proud, unapologetic capitalist. I founded and co-founded more than 30 companies across a range of industries, from itsy-bitsy ones like a nightclub to giant ones like Amazon.com. Then he founded a quantitative and internet advertising company that was sold to Microsoft for $6.4 billion in cash. Now, what does this guy, this super ultra rich guy, have to say? Says, let's speak frankly to each other. I'm not the smartest guy you've ever met or the hardest working. I was a mediocre student. I'm not technical at all. I can't write a word of code. What sets me apart, I think, is a tolerance for risk and an intuition about what will happen in the future. Seeing where things are headed is the essence of entrepreneurship. And what do I see in our future now? I see pitchforks. At the same time that people like you and me are thriving beyond the dreams of any plutocrats in history, the rest of the country, the 99.99%, is lagging far behind. The divide between the haves and have-nots is getting worse, really, really fast. In 1980, the top 1% controlled 8% of the U.S. national income. The bottom 50% shared 18%. Today, the top 1% share about 20%. The bottom 50% just 12%. But the problem isn't that we have inequality. Some inequality is intrinsic to any high-functioning capitalist economy. The problem is that inequality is at historical high levels and getting worse every day. Our country is rapidly becoming less a capitalist society and more a feudal society. Unless our policies change dramatically, the middle class will disappear and we will be back to late 18th century France before the revolution. Now, I've been saying on this program that libertarianism, unbridled, unregulated capitalism, the idea of anarcho-capitalism is monarchy. It is feudalism. And I cannot say that enough. You know what the feudal system was, right, guys? In the feudal system, you had a king. And the king owned all the land. And the king owned all the workers. And all the workshops and all the tools. He owned everything. It was his divine right. He claimed that it was given to him by God. God, of course, is this unforeseeable, unknowable, unseeable thing. This force in the universe that nobody can test or check to see if the person is lying or not. They just say, God wanted me to have this land. God wanted me to control this land. I own all of it. Give me your taxes and you can live on this land. Work my land and I will allow you to live on it. I won't kick you off and let you starve to death. They were slaves to the feudal system. They did all the work. The king reaped all of the rewards. Well, in 18th century France, they got tired of it. They got tired of it. The monarchist rule, the crown as it's known, kept getting richer and they kept getting poorer. And they kept working harder and harder and harder. And they were making less and less and less, which is exactly what is happening in America today. The American worker keeps every day working harder. His work productivity keeps rising. The ability to get a job keeps falling. It becomes more and more cutthroat to try to get a job. It's getting desperate out there. Even people with college degrees are having a hard time finding work. You're now seeing people with master's degrees working in fast food restaurants. That's how bad it's getting. So even though the American workforce is getting smarter, the American workforce is becoming harder working, the American workforce is more productive, their wages have been stagnant for over 35 years. What's been happening at the top for the past 35 years? They've been taking all of your productivity. They've been taking all of your profits. All of that money that you've been making them, they've been taking it from you. The same way that a king just takes all the profits from his land and then gives the peasants what little he thinks they are owed. So France got tired of it in the 18th century. And here's the thing. This is why we have this Statue of Liberty. Most people don't know this. The reason why we have the Statue of Liberty was because after our revolution, the French people looked at us and went, hey, that's a really swell idea. Why don't we just throw off the crown? We could become free. So the French people went into the palace, pulled the king out, pulled him into the town square, chopped his head off right in the middle of the town square. Guillotine. Guillotine, however you pronounce it. Chopped his head off in the public square. That's pitchforks. That's what he's talking about. Throughout history, in every single society where there has been a top wealthy 1% that's been controlling the bottom 99%, throughout history, without fail, every single time the wealthy get too wealthy, the poor people come for them. And they take them. And they kill them. And they burn their houses. And they disperse their fortunes. They take their land. They take it all. They take everything. And it happened in France. They looked at us, they saw our revolution, they said, that's awesome, we want that here in France. Or they said, that's awesome, we need that here in France. Anyway, continuing the article, I'm so glad that this guy agrees with me. This guy agrees with me completely. I've been saying it right here on this program, that unbridled capitalism is like a monarchy, and it's getting too heavy, and the top's getting too heavy, and the middle class that supports the top is getting too thin, and what's going to happen? It's going to break, and it's going to topple. Capitalism is a game of Jenga, and they have pulled one too many pieces from the bottom, and it's starting to rock back and forth. Anyway, so the Statue of Liberty was France's thank you for inspiring them to cut their king's head off. That's why we have the Statue of Liberty. Just remember that. The next time you look at the Statue of Liberty, remember, that is a reminder to you, American citizen, that any day you feel like it, you can rise up and cut off the 1%er's head and take their money. Just remember that. Continuing the article, this is Politico magazine, memo from Nick Honor. I have a message for my fellow filthy rich, for all of us who live in our gated bubble worlds. Wake up. It won't last. If we don't do something to fix the glaring inequalities in this economy, the pitchforks are going to come for us. No society can sustain this kind of rising inequality. In fact, there is no example in human history where wealth accumulated like this and the pitchforks did not come out. You show me a highly unequal society and I will show you a police state or an uprising. There are no counterexamples. None. It's not if, it's when. Many of us think we're special because this is America. We think we're immune to the same forces that started the Arab Spring or the French and Russian revolutions. I know you fellow 0.01% tend to dismiss this kind of argument. I've had many of you tell me to my face that I am bonkers. And yes, I know there are many of you who are convinced that because you saw a poor kid with an iPhone that one time, inequality is a fiction. Here's what I have to say to you. You are living in a dream world. What everyone wants to believe is that when things reach a tipping point and go from being merely crappy for the masses to dangerous and socially destabilizing, that we're somehow going to know about that shift ahead of time. Any student of history knows that's not the way it happens. Revolutions, like bankruptcies, come gradually and then suddenly. One day, somebody sets himself on fire, then thousands of people are in the streets, and before you know it, the country is burning. And then there's no time for us to get to the airport, jump on our Gulf Streams, and fly to New Zealand. That's the way it always happens. If inequality keeps rising, as it has been, eventually it will happen. We will not be able to predict when. It will be terrible for everybody, but especially for us. I'm not going to read the entire article, but I will skip around to some of the high points that he brought up. He goes on to say, the model for us rich guys here should be Henry Ford. Henry Ford, now I talked about Henry Ford here on the program. Henry Ford, who realized that all of his auto workers in Michigan weren't only cheap labor to be exploited, they were consumers. Ford figured that if he raised the wages to then an exorbitant $5 a day, they would be able to afford a Model T. What a great idea! My suggestion is, let's do it all over again. We've got to try something else. These idiotic trickle-down policies are destroying my customer base and yours too. Skipping through the article. The fundamental law of capitalism must be, if workers have more money, businesses have more customers, which makes middle-class consumers, not rich business people like us, the true job creators, which means a thriving middle class is the source of American prosperity, not a consequence of American prosperity. He, of course, continues on. I'm just going to try to hit these main points here. The fastest growing big city in America is Seattle. He's talking about the minimum wage. Seattle had a minimum wage of $9.32, which was 30% higher than the federal minimum wage. And it was the fastest growing city. Now they've doubled down on that bet, and they have $15 minimum wage in Seattle. And there is no mass exodus of jobs. There is no job loss since they've had $15 an hour in Seattle. In fact, they are the fastest growing in the entire country when it comes to job growth. Seattle is. So Seattle has the highest minimum wage, and they're currently the fastest growing in job growth. The next time your conservative friend tells you that raising the minimum wage causes job loss, laugh in his face. It is demonstrably not true. Continuing in the memo, the most insidious thing about trickle-down economics isn't believing that if the rich get richer, it's good for the economy. It's believing that if poor people get richer, it's bad for the economy. Zing! That's a good point. He continues, we rich people have been falsely persuaded by our schooling and the affirmation of society and have convinced ourselves that we are the main job creators. It's simply not true. There can never be enough super rich Americans to power a great economy. I earn 1,000 times the median American annually, but I don't buy thousands times more stuff. My family purchased 3 cars. Not 3,000. I buy a few pairs of pants and a few shirts like most American men. I bought 2 pairs of fancy wool pants and I'm wearing them as I write. What my partner Mike calls manager pants. I guess I could have bought 1,000 pairs, but why would I? Instead, I sock my extra money away in savings where it doesn't do the country much good. I've talked about this before on the program. When rich people take all their money and just shove it into a market somewhere, it's not helping you. It's not buying anything. He continues, so forget all the rhetoric about how America's great because of people like you and me and Steve Jobs. You know the truth even if you won't admit it. If any of us had been born in Somalia or the Congo, all we would be is some guy standing barefoot next to a dirt road selling fruit. He goes after him. He finishes the article saying, I look at the average Joe on the street and I say, there, but for the grace of Jeff Bezos, go I. Even the best of us in the worst of circumstances are barefoot, standing by the dirt road, selling fruit. We should never forget that, or forget that the United States of America and its middle class made us, rather than the other way around. He nails it. He nails it. I can't say it enough. If this inequality continues to rise in America, the party won't last for long. Right now, they've convinced a good 47% of Americans, conservatives, that the blame should be put on the government and that the government is keeping the worker down. This lie, this heresy will not keep the masses fooled much longer. Eventually, even the conservatives will figure out it is the private corporations that has them under a boot, and when that day comes, they will instantly rebel. They will rise out of anger. Coming into the second half of the People's Radio, July 3rd, 2014, let's swing a little bit to some different issues. We could talk all day about how the poor are getting shafted in America. We could talk all day about how the worker is not getting his... In fact, I'm planning an entire show dedicated to nothing but unions and why unions are wonderful and great. Well, not all of them. Don't take that literally. Not all unions are great. There are examples of unions becoming bureaucratic and over bureaucratic, I should say, and just overly greedy and looking out for itself instead of the members of the union. There are examples of that. But for the most part, having a union is the most powerful tool in a worker's arsenal. If you do not belong to a union, do not complain about your job conditions, do not complain about your wage, do not complain about your manager, because you can't. You can't complain about shit. You have no leverage. You have no way to complain without a union because you are just one person and you can be replaced like that. They can fire you, and there's 250 people willing and eager and waiting to take your job instantly, and they're all qualified, and they can all do it. If you think you're the only person on planet Earth that can do your job, your manager does not think so. I can assure you that. If you don't belong to a union, you have no power. You have no leverage. You can't complain about anything. Form a union. Form a union. If you work at McDonald's, form a union. You work at Walmart, form a union. You work at Costco? Okay, Costco might get a slide. Costco actually treats their employees pretty well. You work at Sam's Club, form a union. You work at Five Guys, form a union. Are you a mechanic at a local shop? Join the mechanic union. Join a union, form a union, start a union. It's really easy. Did you know there's people out there, there are people out there that specialize in starting unions. And all you have to do is call them and they will come and help you do it. They will walk you through the process and everything. They'll do it. All right, moving on. Let's talk about this immigration issue. America, don't say we did not see this coming, because we all saw this coming. There's a reason why we've been talking about the immigration issue for the past 4 to 5 years. There's a reason why Fox News has been dragging it up every night. There's a reason why MSNBC has been talking about it every night. There's a reason why immigration has been on the topic of John McCain's freaking talking points for years now. It's because we have this huge southern border and there's no possible way for us to defend it or shut it down. We just can't. We just can't. It would cost $1 trillion to build the type of wall needed to actually keep out humans. Humans are very resourceful. They find ways to get around walls, under walls, over walls, through walls. You would have to build a very robust wall for thousands of miles for it to... Nobody's got that kind of time or money, workforce. I mean, I guess I would support it because it would be a government work program that would put, thousands of people to work, and it would cost money, so it would be like an economic stimulus. I would support building such a wall, I guess. because of the economic stimulus benefits, but it's just not going to happen. Our current government doesn't believe in spending money. Anyway, there's a reason why immigration has been a big issue for years, and we've been talking about it. It's because we have been knowing that there's this immigration snowball coming upon us, and we cannot stop it. We cannot stop the tide. So what is needed is immigration reform. We need laws on the books that address today's current immigration problems and have rational solutions and costly solutions to the problem. And that's what Democrats and Republicans have both attempted to do. Even Marco Rubio, the moron, attempted to get immigration reform passed. And his conservative base told him, no, no amnesty, no amnesty, no amnesty. Even though his bill did not support amnesty, anytime you talk about any sort of immigration reform, the far right wing freaks out. Freaks out, man. You know how bad they freak out? The news has been talking about recently. There was the buses. The Border Patrol is actually taking the children, and this is the crisis we're getting to currently today. We have children coming over the borders in droves. Tons and tons of children coming over the borders seeking a better life. And if they are inspired to swim, alligator-infested waters or what have you to get here, then, I highly doubt that, the inconvenience of being yelled at by some racists is going to change their mind and turn them back around. But anyway, that's what happened. The Border Patrol agents were taking some of these children, some of them like 6, 7, 8 years old, in buses. They were trying to take them to this facility so they could get processed and then, ironically, be deported back home. And the buses were stopped in the middle of the road by a bunch of Tea Party extremists, also known as racist bigots. And they were shouting at them and preventing them from going anywhere. And they were shouting incoherently, just random, no immigrants, immigrants be gone, take care of ours first, They interviewed this one lady. I don't think lady applies here, but anyway, at one point in the interview, she actually said, and I quote, "I can't get no unemployment because there's too much money going to the welfares." So that just goes to show you just how incredibly stupid those people are. Just rabble-rousers. Tea Party rabble-rousers. Racist bigots. They all should go to Cliven Bundy's ranch. Anyway. Obama's going to take executive action on immigration. This is from CNN. President Barack Obama said Monday in blaming Republican inaction on immigration reform for escalating problems, including a surge of undocumented children crossing the border from Mexico. At a hastily scheduled Rose Garden appearance, Obama said that top House Republican Speaker John Boehner told him last week that the chamber's GOP majority will continue blocking a vote on a Senate-passed immigration bill. In response, Obama said he was starting a new effort to fix as much of our immigration system as I can on my own without Congress. Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson and Attorney General Eric Holder will identify additional actions my administration can take within my existing legal authorities to do what Congress refuses to do and fix as much of our immigration system as we can. Quote, "If Congress will not do their job, at least we can do ours," he said, adding he expected the recommendations by the end of summer and would act on them without delay. The failure of House Republicans to pass a darn bill is bad for our security, it's bad for our economy, it's bad for our future. America cannot wait forever for them to act, President Obama said. Do you agree, listener? I tell you, I agree. This is the greatest do-nothing Congress in the history of America. Now, I haven't been around for all of America, but I have been around for over 30 years in this America, in Ronald Reagan's America. And I've noticed that this particular Congress is the most pathetic most idiotic and gets the least done. They refuse to do anything. They refuse to work. They refuse to pass a single bill because they know that congressional action leads to things moving forward in our society. It's the great chain. It's the cogs of the great machine turning. And they know that if they turn those cogs and the machine starts running again, America's going to start to heal. America's going to start to get better. America's going to start working again. And if that happens when a black man is in office, that'll make them look bad. You see, they've got a good thing going in America. They've convinced people for over 100 years British colonialism is the correct way, the capitalist way. Just allow the rich white landowner to control everything and everything will be fine. Well, now they've got a black man in office, which kind of goes against the whole British colonialism rich white man now, doesn't it? Anyway, it's no secret. It is no secret. This is not a conspiracy theory. Some of the high-ups in the Republican Party, when Barack Obama was elected the first time, met at a pub or a restaurant right there in Washington, D.C., and they said, our number one priority from here on out is to ensure that Barack Obama's presidency is a failure and that history remembers him as a failure. Because they don't want Obama's presidency to be something that other minorities can draw inspiration from. They don't want it to be an American success story. They don't want it to be a rags to riches story, which is exactly what it is. The story of Barack Obama is the story of a little boy who grew up just like me or you in a working class environment, in just a normal middle class household, in a normal working person's household, and he went to college, he bettered himself, he studied and made good grades, he worked his way up through sheer work effort, and through writing, being a good lawyer, being a good professor, and writing books that people enjoyed, he brought himself from obscurity to prominence. He became a senator. He was such a popular senator, they asked him to speak at the Democratic National Convention. He blew that speech out of the water and instantly became a hot shot of the Democratic Party. And then he decided to run for president, and almost overnight he started to get major backing from the people. Obama's election story is a great one to be told. He received more money from people, individual donors, $5, $10, $15, $20, from people like me and you than he received from corporate interests such as big banks and the weapons manufacturers. He really was a candidate of the people. It was an amazing wave of democracy that spread through America for just a little while. And that's got the right wing in Congress scared to death. They are shaking. They're scared that that little flame will start to burn again and will ignite and spread throughout the rest of Congress. And they'll get thrown out on their ass because we, the people, will vote in people from us. They're scared. So their job now is to make Barack Obama seem like a failure, seem like a tyrant. They call him a tyrant, the executive order president. Don't you listen to those lies. Barack Obama has signed in less executive orders than any other president in my lifetime, any other president in 2 lifetimes, any other president since before World War II, that's for sure. Barack Obama has signed less executive orders, but they're trying to call him the tyrant King Obama who signs executive orders. That's just not true. It's just not true. Chances are, if you ever hear a conservative say something, the exact opposite is the truth. Moving on, grist.com. We are massively underestimating climate cost, experts warn. Crank up global temperatures by 30-odd degrees and humans could plummet towards extinction. Yet one of the world's most cited economic models on climate change affects projects just a 50% reduction in global economic output if temperatures rise that much. That's an example of how substantially we've been underestimating the cost of climate change. So argues a new peer-reviewed paper in the Economic Journal written by Nicholas Stern, author of the famed 2006 Stern Report on Economics of Climate Change, and Simon Dietz, both of the Grantham Research Institute on Climate Change and the Environment. In part because we're relying on an outdated economic model, carbon trading programs are woefully undercharging polluters for their climate-wrecking emissions. The new paper critiques a model developed in the 90s, the Dynamic Integrated Model of Climate and the Economy, or DICE. To Slow or Not to Slow by Yale economist William Nordhaus. Both represented historic efforts to evaluate the economic cost of climate change, demonstrating that delaying climate action would increase its cost. But DICE was a basic model by modern standards, and Nordhaus himself emphasized its limitations, yet it continues to be cited by leading researchers groups, and including the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, with the absurd effect of substantially reducing the seriousness with which global warming's economic impacts are being viewed. Quote, this modeling framework has had a lasting influence on the field, and indeed several elements of it still constitute an industry standard, Stern and Dietz write, while it was very much the purpose of too slow or not too slow to cast climate change mitigation as a dynamic investment problem in which abatement costs could be paid up front so that climate change could be avoided several decades into the future. The model dynamics were unsatisfactory. So right here we have Stern and Dietz claiming it's extremely, quote, extremely important to understand the severe limitations of the standard economic models such as those cited in the IPCC report. I hope our paper will prompt other economists to strive for much better models. They're basically saying that all of our models, all of our economic models that currently tell us that climate change is going to ruin our entire world economy are not severe enough, that the destruction will be more than that. How much more could it be? It's already going to be a destruction of the world's economy. This is like mutually assured destruction for nuclear warfare, folks. They're saying, oh, don't worry, we have enough nukes to blow up the world 4 times. How many times do you need to destroy planet Earth? Only once. The final segment of the People's Radio, let's try to talk about some uplifting things, ways that things are getting better. This is from what is this? Gigaohm.com? I think it's gigaohm.com. Gigaohm.com. Gigaom. This is written by Katie Furrenbacher. Love that last name. It's pretty awesome. This startup says it can make the world's cheapest solar panels. Oh, by the way, I don't have it on my desk currently, but a new report shows that China is now the world's largest photovoltaic maker on planet Earth. I also called that. If you listen to my program, folks, if you listen weekly, you're going to have a lot of insight into how things are going to unfold over the next 5, 10, 15 years. That's why I'm here. This startup says it can make the world's cheapest solar panels. An 8-year-old startup has survived hard times and a major pivot, has set a new world record goal for itself, making the world's cheapest solar panels at 28 cents per watt. Whether that's in the US or in China, the company's name is Siva Power, S-I-V-A, sivapower.com, originally founded with the name Solexant. And it says in 4 years, it could make the thin panels at the price at a 300 megawatt factory that it hopes to fund and build. It's an ambitious target. Siva Power originally was looking to make thin film solar panels by printing the material cadmium telluride in the form of nanocrystals onto rolls of a flexible metal foil, but it along with dozens of other thin-film solar startups like NanoSolar, Solyndra, and Myosol, face tough times when the price of silicon, the key ingredient in traditional solar panels, dropped dramatically, and Chinese companies flooded the market with cheap solar panels funded by government loans. See how the Chinese government is actually paying for things to happen over there? Meanwhile, our government refuses to pay for anything. As companies like Solyndra went bankrupt, the company, then known as Selexant, decided to pivot in 2011 and hired current CEO Brad Mattson to lead in a new direction. Mattson previously founded and led chip companies Novellus and Mattson Technology and was partner focused on a solar at venture firm Vantage Point Venture Partners. Say that 5 times fast. At venture firm Vantage Point Venture Partners. Now Siva Power is focused on making thin film solar panels out of material combo copper, indium, gallium, and selenium, also known as CIGS, C-I-G-S, which is the same material that was under development by NanoSolar, Solyndra, and Myosol. Myosol. M-I-A-S-O-L-E. The company said it's using the manufacturing technique co-evaporation to deposit the compound straight onto the glass, which are then encapsulated. Other SIG panels makers have mostly focused on depositing SIGs onto metal, which are then cut into strips, assembled on panels, and encapsulated in glass. But to get to 28 cents per watt, Siva Power will have to build a 300 megawatt pilot factory, which is large for a pilot line for an emerging technology like SIGs. Japanese solar company Solar Frontier, part of Showa Shell, is one of the only companies making SIGs, and it has a 900 megawatt annual capacity. Siva Power thinks that the 300 megawatt line could get to 40 cents per watt, and then with 2 years of efficiency tweaks, it could get to below 30 cents per watt. Siva's 300 megawatt factory could cost $100 million, which is a big sum for a startup, particularly a venture-backed startup in a market that has faced a lot of struggles. The issue with some of the early SIGs companies is that they spent a lot of money on factories before their technology was perfected. While Siva Power was originally looking to scale straight up the 300 megawatt line, it is now using a $15 million funding round from the city of Wuxi in China to build a small pilot line first. 28 cents per watt is cheap to say the least. The Department of Energy is funding a solar program called Sunshot, which is looking to push solar panels price below 50 cents per watt by 2020. Other competitive thin films SIG companies can make solar panels for around 55 cents to 75 cents per watt. First Solar broke under a $1 watt barrier in 2009. So there we go. We have a small startup firm, Siva Power, that believes they are going to cut the price of solar panels in half within the next 5 years. That is awesome. That is amazing. That's exactly what we expect. For solar power to take over the world, it will need to cut its cost in half again. And once it does so, it will overtake coal. It will overtake natural gas. It'll overtake basically everything else. All the fossil fuel-based petroleum industry, all of that will be way too expensive and costly versus the price of solar if solar drops in half. And they think that they can do it within 5 years. So let's watch Siva Power and see where they go from Motherboard, which, is this part of Vice Media? I think it is. Check this out, guys. And let me know. You message on Facebook, the People's Radio on Facebook. That's facebook.com/Technocrat Radio. You let me know if you think this is a good idea or not, because more things like this will be announced soon. This is just the beginning. Biohackers are trying to modify yeast to make vegan cheese that does not suck. Most of my vegan friends are down with veggie burgers and vegan confections, but vegan cheeses are a non-starter. They just don't compare to the real thing, but that might change soon. A group of biohackers in Oakland are working on a project that would create real, with quotation marks, cheese, real vegan cheese Now, the way that they're going to do it, according to this report here, the way that they're going to do it is they're going to put cow genes into the yeast. So the yeast is going to, some way or another, make actual, cow milk type cheese. I don't really have time to read through that entire article. But biohackers are now going to genetically modify yeast with cow genes in order to make, quote, real, quote, cheese. Isn't that interesting? What an amazing time we currently live in the 21st century, when we are getting to see all of these emerging technologies, all of these new incredible technologies. Things that were considered science fiction in the 1950s and 60s are now becoming science fact in our day and age. Is that not incredible? Is that not incredible? Moving on. The surprisingly strong case for colonizing Venus. Now, we've talked about SpaceX here on the People's Radio. SpaceX was founded on the philanthropic belief that human life, should become multiplanetary. Basically, the way that it works is right now we have all of our eggs in one basket, literally and figuratively speaking. All of our chicken eggs are here, and all human beings are here. So one does not need to imagine for long before they come up with a plausible scenario that could wipe out all human life on Earth. And that includes an asteroid, a supervolcano eruption, a supernova going off somewhere, even an alien invasion. We never know, right? A comet could come in and boom, and we're gone, right? So right now, we're just kind of hanging on for dear life on this small little rock that's circling this star, and we haven't really branched out, and we haven't really cultivated other options. So SpaceX started with the idea that they would land on Mars, they would build a permanent habitat there, a permanent colony, and then the same way that the New World was created, America was created, they will do the same thing to Mars. I'm a little bit skeptical. It's going to take trillions of dollars to pull this off, because you have to remember, tons of people died settling the New World, and they even had a hospitable environment that they could grow their own food, they could hunt for their own food, and yet still they had to fall back on the Native Americans' help several times to keep from dying. Because settling a new area is rough. It's hard to do. And our history as a species has countless examples of failed settlements. So do I think that they're just going to fly over to Mars, set up a habitat, and get a greenhouse up and running and be like, boom, we're good to go? No. No, there's going to be a lot of trial and error. People will die. It will be a difficult thing. It will be one of the most difficult things that humanity has ever done. And Mars, and this is what gets us to our point. Mars is really hard to colonize. It's got like 1/3 the gravity that we have. And the atmosphere is not thick enough for us to breathe. So no matter what we do to that planet, the atmosphere will never be thick enough for us to breathe. There will never come a day where we're just walking around on Mars, breathing the air, playing baseball, skipping jump rope, or what have you. There will never be an outdoors day, a barbecue day, or a picnic day on Mars. It's just not going to happen. If we were to do such a thing, we would need to increase Mars's mass in order to increase the gravity so that we could increase its atmosphere. Because any atmosphere that we add to it artificially is just going to bleed off into the solar system. The solar winds will just carry it away. One of the reasons why we have such a thick atmosphere here on planet Earth is because the gravity is a larger influence here. Which gets us to the planet Venus. Venus used to be called Sister Earth. In fact, in the 1800s, writers, science fiction writers, even some known astronomers, looked at Venus through a telescope, and they dreamed that under those clouds that we can't see past, there could possibly be oceans and lakes, even Venetians and civilizations. It could be a sister Earth. It could be a place for us to go to, or it could be another Earth-like planet. Well, when we went there during the space race, we found out real quick. It was actually Carl Sagan's work that discovered that Venus has this runaway greenhouse effect. It has this really thick, soupy atmosphere, and it's so hot on the surface of Venus that lead will melt. It is 600 degrees on the surface of Venus. That is a runaway greenhouse effect. That is what happens when your atmosphere gets too loaded down with carbon dioxide and methane. Everything just goes to hell. Literally, it becomes a hellish nightmare of heat. So, people were like, well, we have to go to Mars because we can't go to Venus because Venus is too hot. Not so fast, my friend! Why worry about, this is from City Lab, The Atlantic. Why worry about building a colony on Mars when instead you could just float one high above the surface of Venus? That's right, science fiction writer Charles Strauss recently revived the idea of building a Venetian colony when he suggested cheekily that billionaires ought to be compelled to donate to massive humanity-improving projects organizing for humanity. He suggested, too, a Manhattan project like to focus on developing commercial nuclear fusion or the construction of a floating city on Venus. That's right, a floating city! Here's the idea to close out the program. It's too hot on Venus at the surface, but if you float 30,000 feet up in the atmosphere, then you hit a just right point. You hit a point where the atmosphere starts to thin out and it becomes breathable for us, and the temperature becomes lower and it starts to become livable for us. Humanity may have a Jetsons future! Thanks for listening to The People's Radio.